everyone, and welcome to today's episode. We're going to be talking about Small Town Harmony by Milla Holt. So, this one is a contemporary romance and it fits within the Christian fiction category. And it's also book two in a series, which is Milla Holt's Rhapsody of Grace series. So, why did I want to read this one? Well, I have enjoyed reading Milla's books, and I love the first book in this series, Hometown Melody. And I also recorded an episode on that in early 2025 when I first started doing my show. And that episode is number 6. So, if you want to look that up, you can. Now, I'm a bit behind on reading this series because the third book's released, but I tell you what, it was definitely worth waiting for. And you can find my book recommendations on my blog at my website at narelleatkins.com, and there'll be a link in the show notes. So this one I did pre-order because I pre-order Milla's ebooks from her online author bookstore that you can find via her website. And book 3 is in my TBR and it's waiting patiently for me to get time to read it because I'm likely to record an episode when I read it because I just love this series. So, anyway, let's talk about the book. Small Town Harmony by Milla Holt is set in England. So we're in a small town in Surrey. So we're south of London in that southern part of England. And we have quite a few romance tropes in this one. So this one is a married couple romance. So we have a marriage in trouble, and it has a lot of women's fiction themes related to the fact that it is a married in trouble romance. There's often they blend. You can sometimes a married in trouble book is more women's fiction than romance. Sometimes it's more romance than women's fiction. This one I would definitely put in the romance category because of the way the romance plays out in the story. And we also have childhood sweethearts because our main characters who are married met when they were teenagers. We have second chances. It's also a celebrity romance with both of our main characters having a public profile. And they're both musicians and singers and have been involved in the music industry as well. So let's talk about the first line, which is this one. Every word of Ezra Falconer's best man speech was a masterclass in hypocrisy. So I really love this first line. I think it's a fabulous first line because it really does set up what's happening at the beginning of the story and Ezra's character. So he is one of the Falconer brothers. So the books in the series are all based around one of the brothers. And he's at his brother's wedding when he says this. And I'm going to put that on hold. I'll get back to that in a minute. I'm going to talk more about Ezra first and then go back to what's happening at the start of the story. So as I said, he's 27 years old. He's a professional Christian musician and singer and songwriter who's had quite a lot of success in the past. So his family is quite high profile in the Christian music world in England. And he also is part of the worship band at church, so he'll lead worship as well as part of what he does. And at the start of the story, his music recording career is stalling. His songwriting's going okay, there's opportunities there, but his last 2 albums that he did with the record company aren't bestsellers, and that's not looking good in terms of his future. Now, the biggest issue, though, in his life is his marriage because his marriage is in a lot of trouble. So he met his wife when they were only 17 years old at church. It was in a youth group connection. Then they got married at 19 and they've been married for 8 years. And what we learn at the beginning of the story is that Ezra has not seen his wife in person for 9 months. Now, 9 months is a long time, and it's not like a military deployment where there's a logical reason as to why couples are apart for a long period of time. This has been a situation that's been created by choices that the characters have made. So it's quite an intriguing opening to where we start with this story. So I'm going to introduce you to our leading lady. So her name is Martha, but her name is also Morgan because Morgan is her professional persona. That's her celebrity name. So she's also 27 years old and she's now a pop star with a huge fan base. And so at the start of the story, her celebrity star is rising. And for the last 3 years, she's been on world tours. And from her perception, she's transformed from being this very normal, average, frumpy housewife who's a little bit overweight and no one really pays attention to and sees because her husband is this amazing Christian musician with a platform and very well known in the Christian music world. And now she's a superstar and she's more famous and successful and wealthier than her husband. So her life has pretty much done a 360 and is very different to what it was a few years earlier. So the first line is that I talked about before. That's Ezra speaking at his brother's wedding, and he's the best man who's doing the speech, as you do at the reception. And Martha is missing in action. She'd promised that she was going to get to the wedding, but she had this last minute show to do, and Ezra's standing there thinking, I'm saying all these wonderful things about marriage, and my own marriage is a disaster, and my wife isn't even here at this family function. So he feels like a complete hypocrite because he's pretending everything's okay when the truth is that nothing is okay with what's happening in his marriage. So we have a meet cute in the story, and maybe it sounds strange to talk about a meet cute in a married couple romance, but these two haven't seen each other for 9 months and have been physically apart. They have had video calls, but I'll get into that in a minute. So it's kind of like a meet cute. And Martha really didn't get the memo that when you're a guest at a wedding, it is the bride and groom who are the center of attention. It's not you. And so I'll let you draw some conclusions about what happened, but it wasn't the best introduction for her to me as a reader, but I did grow to love her character, which I'll explain as I keep going. So Ezra was not impressed with what happened at the wedding and Martha's arrival as well. And there are so many problems in this story. We have our main characters, Ezra and Martha, with the most enormous amount of emotional baggage. And it's not just from their childhood and when they were growing up and things that happened then, it's what's happened in the last 8 years of their marriage and going back to things that happened earlier. So there's a lot of baggage to unpack in this story from their 10 years together. They also are very poor at communicating. They have a lot of communication issues and are keeping secrets from each other. And in a marriage, that's always a disaster. And that will create problems in the story for them. And even though they have spoken, they've had video calls and stuff in the last 9 months, they end up fighting and hanging up on each other. And their relationship's in a really bad place. It's really not good. And Martha's been dealing with this rise to fame, and it's really happened over the last couple of years that she's just become this celebrity superstar. And she's also had a massive physical transformation. So she's done all the workouts, she's hit the gym, she's lost the weight, and she now has the perfect physique that fits the pop star image. And that will also cause her a bit of grief in this story as well. So the glitz and glamour is her Morgan persona, which is very different to the Martha that she used to be before she stepped into this life. And so she's very much in the midst of the celebrity lifestyle with all the travel perks and the entourage and everything that goes along with it as well. So it's very all encompassing for her. And she's pretty much on the road and never home. So, despite Martha's life looking like everything's perfect, she does discover that there are downsides to fame. And we see some of those downsides in the story in terms of what's actually going on with her. And despite being considered this beautiful and amazing woman, that doesn't change the fact that those old insecurities that she's carried for a very long time are still there and they're still causing trouble for her in her marriage. So she's got that going on with her insecurities and communication issues. And then Ezra, as well as not communicating with her, he's got his career struggles that he's dealing with. And they have another issue that has caused some of their time apart, which is the celebrity sponsorships that Martha has chosen to do. Ezra's not particularly impressed with them and in terms of what she's endorsing. And then that puts him in a bit of a tricky situation being associated with her because of his Christian profile and his audience as well. So I'll get back to that in a minute. But I absolutely love this story. Ezra and Martha, despite being celebrities and having a platform and a profile, are really quite real characters. Like you could imagine meeting them in person. And they were very well fleshed out with very detailed backstories. And I appreciate all the work that Miller put into creating these very real to life characters who weren't perfect. They made mistakes and they had to live the consequences of their good decisions and also the consequences of their poor decisions. And Martha's insecurities were very relatable. And even though when I first met her, I'm like, I think I'm Team Ezra on this one, I did warm to her quite quickly. And once I understood what was going on with her, then I really was cheering her and Ezra on to get their marriage back on track and to get their romantic happily ever after in the story. And their marriage problems, it was really interesting how that all came about. And it's kind of tricky to talk about without giving away spoilers, but it really showed how easy it can be for marriages to slide into dangerous territory. And when you've got people in a marriage who are justifying their selfish decisions and justifying prioritizing things that aren't in the best interests of their marriage and the other person, then you start to see the cracks. And that's what we start seeing in this story. And with Martha, with her sponsorships and endorsements, I mean, Ezra has made a lot of money. They're not poor. There was no need for her to go chasing the big bucks as a pop star and to chase extra endorsements on top of what she's doing. And Ezra's issues are genuine with what's going on. It's quite interesting to see how that all plays out in terms of his issues with what she's promoting. And it's quite relatable. And I think about an example I'll use is from the Christian writing world, how you can have different companies and businesses that sponsor a writing organization. And whoever sponsors the organization will have a particular thing they're selling or a particular message they're sending to writers from the products that they have. And the biggest sponsors, whoever spends the most money, which is like the biggest donor in a political party, will always have the biggest influence and the biggest say on what's going on. And so something can start small with a sponsorship and then it can absolutely slide into a mess. And Martha, in terms of her Christian faith and what's going on in her life, she started with some small decisions in terms of sponsorships. And as the story progresses, you'll realize how those little compromises that she's made have really put her into a very difficult place in terms of her faith, her marriage, and also her integrity in terms of what she really values and whether what she values is similar to the products that she's endorsing as well. It was quite interesting to see that influencer side of her career and to see how that all played out on the page. And Ezra's in a really tricky place because, on the one hand, he doesn't want to judge her and he doesn't want to say something that will upset her because their marriage is so fragile. But on the other hand, he also has responsibilities to his own audience as a Christian music artist. And if his wife is endorsing certain things that he is uncomfortable with, how's that going to impact his own Christian witness as a Christian musician with people that trust him, et cetera, et cetera. So it was really interesting how that all played out in the story. It was very well done and I really enjoyed it. So Ezra's really got to not just look at his wife. So, you know how it can be very easy to look at the other person and see all their faults. But also in this story, Ezra needs to look at himself because he also has some integrity issues that he needs to consider. And Martha is very aware of those integrity issues, and that feeds into her insecurities. And so, as the story progresses, both of them will have to deal with some pretty hard stuff that comes to looking at whether they have integrity in the way that they are living their lives. So I loved how the story has a happy ending and we see justice in how things play out and we get the promise of a romantic happily ever after. And that's probably in some ways why I prefer to read Marriage in Trouble in romance rather than women's fiction, because in women's fiction you can't guarantee the happy ending and it's always hard to read a book about a marriage that isn't surviving, depending on the circumstances. But in a romance, you know that despite all the problems and issues, these characters are going to be able to overcome the obstacles and get there happily ever after and restore and repair their marriage. And so I love that about this story. And the healing journey and the faith journey of the characters, I just loved it. And there were some really sweet moments in terms of the romance as they were working through that process that I just loved as well. And the side characters. There were a couple of side characters that weren't particularly likable, and we get to see what's really going on with them as the story progresses. But I loved Ezra's family, as I did in the first book, and his mother and brothers, and also the church community that supports them. And I love the ending of this story. It was just fabulous how everything falls apart in the story, and I'm turning the page and turning the page and turning the page to find out what happens next. And at the end, we get that point where justice does prevail, and it's quite good to read it in a story because in real life, often people get away with some really rotten and bad stuff, and they aren't held accountable for their actions. But in this story, we get that accountability, which I really loved. So I would describe this story as having strong faith elements, and we have trust issues in terms of the characters, not just trusting God, but also trusting each other. We have strong forgiveness themes in the story that get unpacked as well, which I really liked. And we see a complete faith journey for both Ezra and Martha, where when they get to the end of the story, they're a different person to where they've started because there's lessons and things that they've had to learn and do in terms of their relationship with God during the story. So, my favorite book quote from the story is this one: She chose truth over profit, integrity over image. So, this quote comes from later in the story, and it's Martha, who is the person we're talking about. But it could have also, in many ways, applied to Ezra because they're both wrestling with some really big issues in this story. And there are consequences from some of the unwise decisions that they've made that they have to deal with as well. So, in terms of the impact on me, there were lots of smiles, and I was worried about these characters. And I did read this book quickly within 2 days because, particularly once I got to the middle and a whole lot of stuff started happening, I just couldn't stop turning the page because I had to know what happens next. And the story also made me think about how and why Ezra and Martha got themselves into the situation that they were in at the start of the story and how they could work their way out of the mess that their marriage had become. And it wasn't just their marriage, it was other aspects of their lives also needed some work and needed some healing and restoration as well. So this one is book two in a series, but you can definitely read Small Town Harmony as a standalone story. And you could just read book two and not read the others if you want. But I would recommend if you're planning to read the series to read them in order because then you'll get introduced to the characters from other books and that will give you a bit more of a richer experience in your reading if you do read in order. So, anyway, in summary, I would recommend Small Town Harmony to readers who like married couple romance, to readers who like happy endings and the marriage restored in the married couple in trouble situation. I'd also recommend it for readers who like second chances stories. And if you like the English setting in the country, it's very picturesque. I really enjoyed that. And I'd also recommend this one to readers who like realistic situations that are written with quite a lot of sensitivity. So it could have been a lot grittier, but it wasn't. And I really appreciated the beautiful way that Miller wrote this story. But at the same time, there are some big issues that aren't sugar-coated as well. So we get to experience what's going on through the character's eyes as well, which was quite eye-opening at different times. And you'll enjoy this one if you like musician characters, and I recommend it if you like contemporary Christian romance series, particularly when the brothers and the family are the big connector of the series. And I recommend this one to readers who like celebrity characters in their romances, particularly characters who are struggling with faith issues that because of the pressures of celebrity life, there's certain things that will come up from time to time. And this story doesn't sugarcoat a celebrity living an amazing life by any stretch of the imagination. And I also recommend this book to readers who like strong and relevant faith elements in their story that look at trust and forgiveness and justice themes that are explored as well. Thanks for joining me today. Does Small Town Harmony sound like a book that you'd like to read? Have you read it, or have you read any other books in the series? What did you think? You can let me know. If you're listening on the podcast, you can send me a text via a link in the show notes. If you're watching at YouTube, you can like the episode or leave a comment at YouTube. You can also email me via my website where I have a contact form, and that's at narelleatkins.com. And also, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. And you can do that at your favorite podcasting app, or you can subscribe at YouTube. And then you'll get a notification when the next episode drops. And also, if you enjoyed this episode, please share the link with a friend, especially a friend who enjoys reading contemporary Christian romance, and also a friend who you think would like reading Milla Holt's books. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.